What is happening? Welcome to the Fireside Chat. It is getting cold here in New York. It was 45 this morning,
Oof.
and I'm so glad to be by this fire once again with the great Paul Sporer. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing all right. My ball
Yeah.
club lost in
Oof.
a pretty shocking way, and it stunk. But as I posted on Twitter, man, that season was amazing. Every ounce of that 2 month run, I was in pure heaven. I'm
Mm.
obviously baseball first, foremost, and above all. But my second favorite team is my Lions, right? My Detroit Lions. So both those teams being good right now, I that's never happened. I don't really know what to do with myself. So I wasn't going to wallow too much in the misery of the game five loss. I really just appreciated the amazing run. So and thankfully the fire is drying my tears. So you can't really tell
Yes,
that I've
there it
been
is.
that I've
It's
been
just
crying.
evaporating and creating a nice precipitation
Exactly.
and everything in the ceiling. So I know we've taken a small break recently, but the work is being put in, guys, in the background. You can hear the hammer on the anvil. And I know I have these top 200 ranks. Actually, I have them pretty much solidified. I'm doing one last pass today and writing all the notes, and that should be out this week. I'm not going to say when. I start realizing that I say a day and then it's not out that day. Then everyone's upset, and I understand why.
Totally
So
feel
it'll be
that.
out shortly. And as I went through it, I'm realizing, Paul, I'm not angry at you. That
I was gonna say that for those that don't know, usually if you're using my
I
first
was
name,
just
I'm in
being
some
more
trouble.
professional the way
Okay.
to speak. Fireside. That the SP landscape is it's a cornucopia this year.
Perfect. I mean,
It's
you're a month early on that term, but we'll accept it. It's the fall. I think anytime in fall. I think it fits better in November, but no, it's perfect.
very true.
Cornucopia
Very
indeed.
true. For Thanksgiving spirit, but my gosh, there are just so many good pitchers to draft this year. We are in the Pitcher List podcasts mock, and representing Fireside is Paul, right after me, which is very fun. I
I
enjoyed
know
that.
that kind of
We can
worked
just
out
text you right
perfectly.
away. Um, and we both been seeing this of how late these guys are going. I understand it is the Pitcher List staff. A lot of us do agree on the same philosophy of waiting
Hmm.
on pitching. That said, I don't think it's incorrect. Of course, I think it is the right path because hitting is uh, harder to really solidify. I think and feel
And to
good
pick
about.
up high impact, because if you just think
Yes.
about how the season works, like a pitcher can come up as a rookie or because of an injury, take off and become a huge piece. Sure, that can happen with hitting, but it is much rarer because even if there is some great outfielder to take over for the hurt left fielder, he might have already been rostered because he was a good platoon guy or he's already on the
Mm,
radar. Like there's more pitchers that just come plain out of nowhere than there are hitters.
yeah.
And so we can speculate on those guys late. You want to get your established group of 600 plate appearance guys, as many of them as you can.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also harder to assess in season if what is real and what isn't, I think.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's when it comes to pitching, it's really nice that we have a one night sample to say like, hey, we have like a whole week's worth of stuff in one night.
Yep.
And that's kind of also the reason why I'm a pitching analyst because it's easier. So I don't want to have to deal with rolling charts and look at every single rolling chart like Scott Chu does. That's why we're making our pro dashboard, so you don't have to look anymore. But it's just so much easier, at least in my view, to go and find stuff in season with pitching and to solidify some sort of hitting is great. But what that means is typically when I get to be like cool 7th, 8th, 9th round, I'm starting to have to dive into my more aggressive rankings. I have to go after guys who haven't really done it yet. And I'm expecting to go for that jump to get that value. But this year, oh man, it is insane to me. You have what was it? Nola and Ober and Freed, and we were feasting in the 9th round.
Hmm.
Joe Ryan, no, his 10th round was Freed and Alcantara and Nola and Ober and Valdez and Gallen and Schwellenbach and Peralta. Are you kidding? And what this does is it means that the mid round starting pitchers, the actual true mid rounds, not really just an extension of the top ones just going further down, become much more personalized.
Mm-hmm.
There are about 30 or so that anyone could say like, this is my guy. And when we saw that a lot in the 12th and 13th, for example, you got sniped on yours.
I did.
And essentially there were these picks of 3 that it was like, cool, that's obviously the 3 that we were going for, except the next 3 could be ranked higher by others.
Right.
So, and those first 3 were Hunter Brown, Ryan Pepio, Jared Jones. And the other 3 were Kodai Senga, Carlos Rodon, and Sonny Gray. That
All
is the
6 in a
12th
row.
round of a 12 team,
Mm-hmm.
12 team, 12th round. Absolutely wild. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is who are those guys around that I'd say 30 round 35, sorry, overall SP 35 to about
35-ish, yeah.
60, 70 that you're saying these are the ones that I'm actually going to say I'm hoping I get them. Or is it just there are so many I don't really care. I just know I'm going to go after this. How do you feel about it?
I definitely I attack the glob, as we like to call it, those big pockets of pitching talent where they're not separated by much, even though there might be 30, 40 ranks, which feels like a lot. The
Yeah.
talent discrepancies are small, and like you said, you look at 3 different rankings, they could be vastly different, and I wouldn't necessarily say one is wrong or anything like that, but I like to attack. Some people let the globs come to them. I'll take the 6th guy out of my 8-man glob or whatever. I'm trying to go get my top guys, the ones that I really believe in. So while I do understand that the talent discrepancies aren't massive, I still try to identify ones that I really love. And you talk about that run there where that started by Hunter Brown, by Chad Young. Exactly who I was eyeing, but then I got Ryan Pepio right after, and you took my other guy right there, Jared Jones. Those were my top three on the board in that order, and it was crazy how in lockstep the 3 of us were. And then, like you said, Senga, Rodon, Gray go right after that. Wouldn't you know, they were 3 of my next 5 pitchers, right? So we were all kind of in lockstep there. I had Raylo and Manaya a little bit better than a couple of those guys, but that's a rich group in the 12th and 13th. Kikuchi, look what he did in Houston. He went in that 13th round. Seth Lugo, who just came off an amazing year, went in the 13th round. So yeah, I like to attack, and those guys that we just talked about in that area are going to be guys that I'm going back to dwell with. I was big on Pepio coming into the year. I'm going back. I feel like he didn't do anything to disabuse my notion that he can be maybe not an ace. It's hard to ever put that on anybody until we really kind of see them doing it. But can Ryan Pepio be a top guy that you set and forget? Yes, I still believe he can. And after his first full season, I think they loosen the reins a bit. I think we have a chance at getting 162 plus innings, which means a qualified ERA season for him at age 27. So he's one at that range that really jumps out to me. And you've got him ranked, let's see here, where'd you have it? 47.
Yeah, so
right by Brown.
Right, I do. Yeah, Sporer has access to my rankings inside of the Google Sheet at the moment.
Haha, I have them. You don't, guys.
No,
I'm just kidding.
As he should. You should be able to see these. And you actually will see that Hunter Brown and Ryan Pepio are not close to Jared Jones for me.
Right. You
Jared
had Jones a cut above.
Up. And the thing is, though, I have him in a relatively same tier. I was talking about this before the show with you about trying to group differently for next year. And actually, before I go on my whole spiel about it, I really wanted to hear your take on bucketing players and just your assessment of the kind of player to go for generally in your drafts. Less so about, hey, look, I just like this guy to have a good season.
Right.
And instead of when you're trying to figure out the ones that you actually want to draft and to craft your team, how do you lean when it comes to the makeup of the player?
I've been trying to be more mindful about putting together a rotation, meaning the strengths and weaknesses meet with each other a bit more, as opposed to just piling up the best talent. I think I've lamented this on this show at a point, definitely on my podcast last year, when I had like the best ERA and the most strikeouts and no dubs. I had no wins because I had a bunch of guys on crummier teams. Like, it was obvious why. I had done it to myself, and I was like, okay, you drafted talent. They proved to be talented, but they weren't cashing in those wins. You got to have a balance. And I know wins are hard, but on some level, if you got 3 Angels starters, Paul, it's not going to necessarily work out. Now, I did move a little bit away from my Angels this year, although you put me on the Jose Soriano train, so I stuck with him. Reed Detmers, because I'm talking 2023 with this. I tried to be
Yeah.
better about it this year. I still didn't quite get there, though. I actually had some win bad luck this year. I had some guys on
I
better
mean, Reese
teams.
Olson went 0 for 6 or something to start. I'm sure you had him.
Exactly. And so when I'm dealing with that, you do the best you can, though, but I'm much more mindful of it than I used to be. I used to just say, give me the talent and I'll figure it out. But now I am, if I have 2 or 3 of those guys early on that are going to be on teams that are expected to be crummier, then I have to start looking at the Clark Schmidts of the world. I use him as a guy because I do like him. He's on the
Great
Yankees. He's got a
example.
chance at some dubs. Even if his numbers don't go as good this year, you think for 25, you feel like that he can steal some wins just by being part of a quality team. So I am trying to
Sure.
put more of a staff together to make sure I've got my Ks here. Maybe I can get some ratios here with a good control guy and some of the wins. I don't do too much of it. I still want to take the best talent, but particularly with the wins, don't just think that they're going to come out in the wash. If you put 6 guys on your team and all 6 of those guys are on teams that are projected to be bottom 2 in their division, unless you get super lucky, you're not going to have enough wins.
Yeah. By the way, I love that, and I just realized something. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Paul has no idea what I'm talking about, but what I do want to mention with that is wins are very strange, exactly as you said. Of just there are a lot of times that you see player rater say like this guy was the 10th best starting pitcher.
And
And
it's
what I
all
just want to
dubs.
say to everyone, exactly, it's all dubs, but it's really just it's all volume. The volume
Right.
of
That's
a
a great
certain
point too.
quality,
Yes.
right? It's just did they start 32 games?
Right.
If they
That's going to
started
put
32
you.
games, watch Patrick Corbin, believe it or not, actually is somewhat higher on the play rater than you expected because he started all year.
That is a great point.
And he had more strikeouts because of that, and he had more wins because of that. But shy away from using the play rater as much as you can, because a lot of those guys that are higher on it weren't drafted and they didn't stay on your team the entire year either, right? It was something that you wanted to jump in at a certain point, or even if you drafted them, you likely wouldn't have stuck around with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really tough to assess player rater because wins are such a big thing. And I cannot emphasize enough, you really should just be focusing on skills and not really a player rater. Just
I need
say,
I need to
look,
do it
what
again.
is your ability?
I need to do it again this year. A couple of years ago, I did wins eliminated player rater rankings just to get
Mm,
a better idea of who are the guys that were putting a quarter, half of their dollar value, because these player raters, we have one at Fangraphs, spits out a dollar value, and Justin and I like to reference it, but I do agree that it has flaws. And if you lean on it too heavily and you say this guy was 18th on the player rater and your guy is 44th, therefore my guy's better,
right.
I can't accept that at face value. I need to know the context of those
No.
players. So I definitely agree with not leaning too heavily on that sort of stuff and removing the wins from the previous year, right? And by the way, quality starts is not the perfect fix either, because those are also hard to predict with team management, right? On the win side, you need the bullpen and the offense to support you. On the quality start side, you need the manager to support you. So I think
Right.
those
I
have
mean,
become just as difficult.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, wins do actually also matter with that, right?
Yes,
If you're getting pulled, if you're like the Twins, and you get pulled before 5, then you're just not going to get a win, or the Rays or so. But if you're on the Guardians, they will let you go a
they're
little
going to
bit
trust
longer.
you.
So it's the hardest thing we do is predict volume.
Agreed.
And I say this every offseason. We're going to bang our heads 20 million times about this guy gets this many innings and this many strikeouts and this many wins and so on and so forth. And he's reliable and he's not. And really, I can't emphasize enough of just focus on the skills as much as you can. But yes, do not go completely on one side of that. You have to have a balance. I think that's a great point, Spore. And it's why I have mine situated. I'm tempted to just make tiers that are a combination of both sides of the skill. That is your more expected volume, which, yes, there are guys that I think we can say, if everything is going fine, your team is going to let you go 6
Right.
and you're going to be able to do this. You have a skill set that speaks to more efficiency in a game, while there are others who are more of your volatile types that are not efficient in at bats. They might have better, might have decent walk rates, but that doesn't mean that they are getting quick outs necessarily. And if they are strikeout pitchers, a lot of the times that means that they have deeper at bats. The reason that Sandy Alcantara and Zach Wheeler are able to go over 200 innings is because they don't
Exactly.
have 35% strikeout rates, because they aren't getting to 2 strikeouts. They're getting those quicker outs effectively.
And there are
So
some
there's a balance
unicorns.
here.
There's some unicorns that have, they're the top aces that can do, a lot of 4 or 5 pitch strikeouts, but that's very rare. So that's a great
those
call
are
out
the
there.
CSW darlings, the ones that
Yeah,
go like absurdly high. The King Cole
those are the
was very cool, and he
superstars.
was able to go long because he was just so good, which he's not as much as I am. So, how I've structured this, and as far as teams construction, to really kind of give my sense of it, is I try as hard as I can in the off season to avoid hype trains and narratives. I know I make them, certainly,
Sure.
but what I mean is to say, look, like in general, try not to just get super focused on one dude. Even with
Mm-hmm.
Cole Reagans, I wasn't gonna draft him in the 4th round, even though I was such a big fan of his. I was like, if my plan is to wait until the 6th or 7th, and whatever is there then is what I get, and hopefully it's Cole Reagans. But it didn't mean that I'm going to overextend. I'm just going to say, look, I put him in this grouping, and I'm going to plan accordingly. And instead of pulling hairs about number 23 versus number 24, just say, look, they're all kind of the same. You don't really know who's going to take that step forward. You don't really know who's going to get hurt or so,
Right.
but you have a generalized understanding of their performance, them being more solid than others. And I am trying as hard as I can to grasp who are the ones that are going to drive us nuts, who are the ones that have the most potential for pulling out our hair, and who are the ones that are like, yeah, we generally understand what they are, but also could have a drop off that really isn't as valuable. And really, we'd be able to understand that at the very least. But are they able to be a top 20 guy? Are they not? Are they, did they squeeze everything that they did out of that arsenal previous year? That is the Zach Eflin rule. That is, Eflin had this amazing year, but he's not really a stuffist. He's not really like a
Right.
over the top, I demand this. And generally, when that happens and they have a peak season, it means it falls back down. That was a peak season.
Okay.
He's likely not going to be able to put it all together again. He did have moments last year, don't get me wrong, but it's about a full season.
Can I
right?
get, can I,
Please.
can I ask you about a player that is the next year version of him, and you
Well,
tell me if
right,
it's
that's
lazy or accurate? Is it
of
not
course.
1,000% Seth Lugo?
Yeah, it's Seth Lugo. Yeah.
It's just 100% Seth Lugo. Okay, just want
I'm
to make
not
sure that
touching
that's
Seth
not like
Lugo.
a
I have
lazy
him at
comp,
51, which you say, what? That's nuts.
and that's going to make people bug their eyes out. But that's exactly where he
But
needs.
then,
I mean, maybe not 50. I'm not saying the rank, but like he should not be. I don't think you can make a cogent case to put Seth Lugo as a top 25 starter next year. I'm sorry, like
no, there's
I
too many
can't
others.
get there with it because he's not a stuffist. This is Zach Eflin again, and I will say I liked Zach Eflin coming into the year, and I got a little too aggressive on him. I thought the floor was so stable that I still had him in my top 15.
I mean, I had
And
him in like 22 or so. It's like he was like one of those. I was like, I don't know what to do with you, so find out who
right,
you are. And
and
I'm trying to avoid that as much as I can this year.
I thought that volume would be there, and it was fine, 165
Yeah,
innings, but I was hoping that
you're
maybe
lost.
it'd go even better. Yeah, like if you took him even at the gaudy ranking that I put, I don't think you lost your season. With 359,
Right.
115, he was fine, but he didn't do it again. And I'm learning from that, and I see everything in Seth Lugo exactly the same. And so you will not see Seth Lugo ranked 14th in my 2025 rankings.
Ah,
Let's
there
just
you
say
go.
that.
Oh no, did someone do that?
No. I'm saying that's where I put Eflin, and I'm not going to make the same
Oh, I
mistake
see.
with
Okay, I was like,
Lugo.
oh man, all right. We have to have some conversations. But no, I mean, so really, when it comes down to that theory, is just first and foremost, I think that you should not settle as a fantasy manager. And what that means is do not look at a projection and say, cool, I'm happy I get this thing, we kind of done, and this is what I get. You should be drafting guys that you hope exceed their value. That's really what I'm getting at. Is I'm a huge proponent of if you're not first, you're last in fantasy baseball.
Ricky
That
Bobby
doesn't mean you
style.
have to be stupid. That doesn't mean you have to be like go ham or take massive risks. I think there are ways to do your draft where you are getting guys at a spot where they don't have to be at their peak to retain that value. However, there is much more to get at that point. And
That's
if you
exactly
go
what you
with
want.
that methodology, then you realize, wait a second, I can't go for like pitchers in the first 5 rounds because they have to hit. If
They
that
basically have
works
to be
out.
aces, and
Right.
and at that point, it doesn't even come down to the talent; it comes down to the volume.
Exactly.
And
And we
I
can
did take
predict those things.
an ace in our draft. I took Skeens in the second round,
'Cause
but
that's
that's because
fun.
I think he's a
That's
first
fun.
rounder. Right. And I had Gunnar Henderson. I knew I was going to stack hitting right after him. I went Skeens in the second round and then Devers, Doyle, Semien. So I went back
Yeah.
right to the batting well. But no, I do agree that it is very difficult to feel super confident about taking those aces. Like even when I took Corbin Burns my main event this year, I was like, I I don't just want him to pitch 180, 175 at the very least. I need him to.
Yeah.
And obviously,
Right.
you need your hitters to perform too. I'm not saying it's different there, but it just feels more devastating with the pitching for some reason. Maybe that's just the feeling that I'm getting as opposed to the actual
Mm.
math of it.
Well,
But when I miss on those early pitchers, it kills me more than the hitters, I feel
well,
like.
usually it's the hitters when they don't come through, they're not droppable. They're just not as
Right.
good.
They're just having like Semien this year.
Yeah.
You were never cutting him, but he wasn't great. He was just kind
Right.
of bland.
Yeah, I
So
had
I
to
agree
stick
with
with
that.
Torres the entire year because there's nothing else better on for second
What do
base. But like, I
what are
guess
you
it was
going to
better
get?
by the end. But it's that's the kind of the case. But there's really it can become very binary with
Right.
the top 5, 6 rounds with pitchers because it's also are they going to stay healthy or not? I
Yep.
actually look back at last year's mock draft that we did with this, and as much as I want to look at my team and everyone else's team, and be like, oh man, all these guys are gonna be good. This is great. So many of those picks, I'm just like, oh no, yeah, that didn't work. That didn't work. And no one had like a definitively good rotation from
Oh,
that
really?
draft.
Coming
No
out
one
of the
left it.
draft?
No one had like, okay, yeah, you this is the right one.
Wow.
Everyone had misses. Every single team in that one, of course, myself included.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting of just to kind of understand that when you're being aggressive on a starter, it's not really what you think it is going to be. There's no real reason to go after that value, I think, because the gap is just not nearly as large as it is in hitting.
And
It's just so much safer.
one of the things that we've always had, and arrogance, confidence, it straddles the line, but
Oh
our
yeah.
ability to find the pitching late, both in the draft
Oh,
and off the waiver wire. Now, part of
I've
it is, I make the joke about the
I've got
arrogance
a
and
gift for
confidence.
you.
What's that?
Yeah, for that. I've got a gift. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. Please keep
No,
going.
it's okay. I was just gonna say part of that is though that you and I are looking at the pictures every single solitary day.
Yeah.
Like we're leveraging our work into that confidence there. It's not just
Right.
that we think we're beyond reproach with pitching
No.
and that we never get anything wrong. We do get things wrong, but we're so ingrained in it that we can burn and churn and keep going. We're always on top of the latest pitcher coming, and again, not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but that's why we will take the aces off the board in a lot of cases because the late round and then waiver wire period is where we can make up in pitching. It is really difficult to do that in hitting. You're
So
not going to find the Lawrence Butler every year in the middle of the summer.
yeah. And thing is, like Lawrence Butler, I got on one team because like, whatever. And then all of a sudden it started working. I was like, oh, cool, this is great. And the thing is, I don't even know if it's working. I don't really know if it's gonna work. It's even
Right.
like 3 weeks or so is process plus is great, but then it can fall and it's just like
Well,
I
because he
don't
was
know.
terrible before,
I
right?
don't know
Like
what's
he couldn't
going.
get anything going before.
So if you guys don't know my top 200 starting pitcher article I put out in October, it's actually kind of funny. I took some influence from like my friend showed me a Magic the Gathering draft guide,
Oh, sweet.
and it was just so detailed about like the different philosophies and things you want to do and why this is this instead of just a ranking of like this is the best card, this is the best
Can you
card.
send that to me?
I don't remember where it is. This was
Oh,
like
okay.
a
That's a
couple
long time
years
ago.
ago.
Sorry.
It was
Because
just like for a certain set or something. And I saw this. I was like, oh, yeah, this is how we should be writing our guides for fantasy baseball, doing our rankings, right? It's why I write so much text and all that kind of stuff, because honestly, a lot of people just want to see the number. But really, the philosophy is really, truly the fun part of it and grasping why I put these numbers here, because it's not just like I think he's projected the rest of the way. That's not it. There's so
right.
much more nuance to it. And one thing I do every year with this way too early ranking is I give you two tables, which are the pitchers drafted after pick 276, because that's the end of your 12-teamer draft. And then the other helpful waiver wire pickups through the year that weren't necessarily like you look back and go, oh man, that guy was just great. But in season, they were picked up on many teams and were helpful, like Albert Suarez and Bowden Francis and Grant Holmes and Jose Quintana and Christian Scott and Brandy Singer and Joey Cantillo and Cade Povich
A lot of
and David
dudes.
Peterson. But can I do this? This is I think I'm going to do quick maths here. 21 names
Do it.
after pick 276 that are like, what? Okay, here we go. Garrett Crochet, Jack Flaherty, Ranger Suarez, Luis Heel, Cody Bradford, Spencer Arrighetti, Jeffrey Springs, Robbie Ray, Tobias Miners, Spencer Schwellenbach, Sean Manaea, Ryan Nelson, Reese Olson, Gavin Stone, Mackenzie Gore, Clark Schmidt, Jared Jones, Ronaldo Lopez, Paul Skeens, Tanner Houck, and Seth Lugo. All after ADP 276.
That is nuts.
So, and I do this every year. This isn't just
I was just about to say that.
Exception.
Yes, this is not like, oh, you're just going back and looking at that. Every single solitary year, and this happens, and there's a huge group.
It to 276, and I had to get rid of Taj Bradley and Michael Walker at 270. So,
dang.
But like,
and they both had bouts of being nice too.
Right. The point of this is, oh wait, that is what's on the wire. And if I write the SB Roundup every day. We do this podcast every week. Paul is doing his streaming article and also his SP article every day. Like this, we are in tune with this. And that we have told you guys to pick those guys up, right? And when that's happening, and you have to be planning for it. So you will find replacements. You will.
And again, some will burn. You move on, you go to the next one too, because it's still the numbers game overall. Like we think a guy's like ready to go and be a dude. Okay, maybe not, but you go to the next one. It continues all year with the pitching. That's my favorite part of it, though. I love that grind with the pitching. Never I hate it with closers. I hate grinding closers because that's just a roll.
3 that never get removed.
That's what I do.
Suarez and
I
Ryan
pay for saves.
And
I am very pay for saves, baby. I know you had that in the league. That's an insane trio, by the way. But yeah, I just love playing the SP game, like getting deep into it and finding those next up and comers in season and in draft season as well. So, I mean, like you said, the lists here are crazy. Like you got so many guys that you could rebuild this list 10 different ways. And it would make sense to me in terms of the rankings. It's just a complete depth of pitching right now. But I guess the next question that people would have though is, how do you start to sort? Because that's where you began things was the grouping. So let's dive into some of that.
So we're going to do that, and we're going to talk about that after this break. So how do you get into it? What I did is I have like an ace is going to ace tier. It's really 1 through 20. I have it listed as 125, and then I moved them away. And then you have like your hollies, and I'm changing the terms of hollies and cherry bomb and Toby this year to be holly is like the one you're not going to drop. You're not going to drop them. You love them. You found the right HR person. You want to marry them. That's holly. But they aren't going to be an ace. They aren't going to be the strikeout stud. They aren't going to be that guy that every single night you expect 6+ innings with 8 strikeouts, 8 to 10 strikeouts, and all of that just as like that league winner thing. But they are super solid, and I have 3 different layers of them to mine. They're just kind of intertwined that end all the way down at Yu Darvish. Because let's be honest, Yu Darvish, you're not going to drop him. He's going to drive you a little bit nuts,
right?
But you're not going to drop this guy.
You're always looking to keep
George Kirby, because I don't think that George Kirby is really going to be that overwhelming strikeout guy. As much as I want him to be that, I don't think he's going to be that. In between, I've now taken the term cherry bomb, which was very much infused with Toby, because really the concept of Toby is the last guy on your team, the last one that you're trying to replace constantly with a waiver wire, and there just isn't anything good enough. And like, fine, I guess I'll stick with this. Oftentimes that meant like your boring types, like your Marcus Stromans of the world. But it also does mean those volatile ones that you just are like, should I be holding on to Spencer Arrighetti before he breaks out? Like that is your Toby kind of aspect as well. So I've actually grouped them together at the moment. I might have another term, like one is a Toby, that's the boring one. And then the other one is just like the little brother or something like that. That is just, you got to bring him along, and he can maybe be really cool for a moment, but like,
that's
really
funny.
Like it.
That's a good description. I like
but I don't know if I'm going to stick with that, but I'll figure something out with that. But cherry bomb to me is really the ones that you are going to keep around because their ceiling is an ace, but they're just too volatile. So that is your Dylan Cease. That is your Blake Snell, your Jared Jones, your Hunter Green, your Reynaldo Lopez, honestly, is that we don't know if this is real. He had like a 2 ERA in 133 innings, by the way. What?
He was amazing. I love Raylo, so like I'm fully bought
like the
in.
most
But
underrated player this entire year. No one talked 100%. Like,
except for me and Justin.
yeah, right.
Because we had that thing about how he kept getting 2-start weeks that kept getting
No, I
canceled.
know.
So
No, we
he did
absolutely.
stay
I
in our
just mean
consciousness for that point, but he was underrated.
no one's done
Like,
this like article on like, hey, Atlanta had the savior of their team.
exactly. And
You
the way
know?
he was moved around, like when there's an injury and he has to get moved up or moved back or just skipped, he was perfect for them.
Right.
Reynaldo Lopez, what a season. I
So,
loved it.
so this is what I'm doing is so I have this as kind of my grasp of I don't know how many of those cherry bombs I really want. I'm trying to avoid it as much as I can. And I'm going to I'm going to maybe stack a little bit of that. But what I'm seeing is that hey, Aaron Nola going in the 10th round. Oh my gosh, I can get Joe Ryan and Aaron Nola and like I don't know, Brian Wu or something as my first 3. Okay, fine, I'll do that. And then I can take more chances with cherry bombs, knowing that they might not actually stick around in the end, probably, but I can do that. That's kind of where I'm thinking, which means if I'm going after a cherry bomb, I better like that guy. I better know how to make a decision on him right away, and I'm not stuck because that is the worst thing you can do in fantasy. We just outlined all of the guys you could pick up off the waiver wire. You don't get them if you are stuck with a guy. You have to get one that you can make an early decision. I talk about this with ODC and Eric Smolsky. I was so wrong. We were so wrong on AJ Puck and DL Hall, but I dropped them the first week because I was like, nope, this isn't it. And I was able to get Jack Flaherty and Tanner Houck because they were off the wire, right? You are muted, Sporer.
I remember you had told me on the Puck thing because we had talked about him and I was like, okay, where are we at? We liked him. And you jumped quick and I was like, are you sure? Because, I'm following you on this one. And it was the right move. He came back around to be a viable reliever for Arizona, but that move was, and DL Hall too, right? And so those quick moves, and you talk about this a lot, about being able to make quick moves. You want easy decisions on guys. You want to know something quickly. It doesn't mean the decision is going to be right. There's a world where Puck straightens himself out and pops off, and Nick says, dang, I cut him too early. Same with DL Hall. But you want to be able to make quick, decisive decisions. I guess decisive decision is kind of redundant. But confident. You want to have confidence in your decisions and don't always look back. That will kill you in fantasy. That missing on a move, like cutting a guy who popped off, is going to make you not want to cut the next guy. It's a poker situation, right? You folded your straight draw and the straight came. Doesn't mean you keep every straight draw going forward. You still play the numbers in the aggregate. And I think that's the toughest part, is dealing with that failure, quote unquote, understanding that you have to understand it's baked in. There's going to be an X% failure rate for everybody. My buddy Scott Pianowski, industry titan, says if you never made a bad cut, you're too tight with your reserve roster if you've never regret a cut.
And do not look at the ifs. Oh, he could be this.
Right.
Future value versus present value. I would say it's 3-1. That is, present value is more valuable 3-1 than future value.
You maybe can tone it down.
Value is.
You can maybe tone that down in a dynasty, maybe. But other than that, in a single league, you've got to be on top of what they're doing here and now.
Or I'm telling you, dynasty leagues, I see this all the time. Guys are overvaluing the future of it, and there are new guys that just pop up and are good.
I tend to agree with that.
But that goes into dynasty too.
I just think you can give a little bit more credence to the future. But for me, I try to play to win, because I also don't want to plan for 4 years down the road. And what if the league disbands? That's exactly it, dude. So like when I'm not in a ton of dynasty leagues, that's more Justin's field. But I want to win right away. If I can win the first year, then I'm like, if this league blows up, at least I got a dub.
Yeah, there you go. There it is. So that's kind of where my philosophy is going into this. It's about time we actually talked about specific players. I know we're like 30 minutes into this plus and we haven't done this, but
I like the philosophy stuff though.
We got to have this part of the beginning. I know it's like 1,000, 2,000 words of like, oh, I just want to see the rankings. Really, this is much more important, I think, because the rankings are just things that you would expect if you read the beginning part. So let's start with you, Sporer. As I'm talking about this, I'm saying, look, you're going after 2 guys in that 7th, 8th, 9th round or so that actually are going to be like Nolan Fried, or maybe it's Alcantara or something like that. I don't know how I got McClanahan. I don't expect that one at all, personally, but maybe he is an SP3 for you. Who are some of the guys that in this range that you feel as if you're going to be finding yourself drafting a lot?
So I mentioned Pepio already. I don't need to belabor that, but like I said, did nothing to disabuse me of the excitement I had coming into this year. And I'll lean on another guy that I got in this draft, the pitcher list one, and Tanner Bybee. because I think he
Yep.
went a bit underrated this year. I don't want to overstate the case. I think people are appreciating what he did for them, but he's one of these guys that started a little bit wobbly. And I remember because I had him on my second main event, which actually flopped. It was a bad team, not because of him though, but he was playing down to his competition. I don't know what it was, but like the bad teams were getting him, and he was having his better starts against the good teams. And obviously, I was never going to cut him or anything, but it was just kind of a set it and forget it. At least for the first 8 to 10 starts for me with Tanner Bybee when you're paying that premium for him. And I really felt that he dialed in kind of starting in mid-May there and
Yep.
didn't really get the credit he deserved. And he was part of a great team. That's what surprises me about how lightly I feel like Tanner Bybee's strong follow-up campaign was covered. You know, it wasn't quite as good as last year at a 298 ERA versus 347, but who cares? We knew he wasn't going to do a 298, or we didn't expect him to, but he lowered the whip from 118 to 112. He added 30 innings of work plus the playoff work. I think Bybee has a chance to be a fantasy frontliner. And I choose that wording carefully because I don't mean ace. I don't mean unquestioned, untouchable ace, but in that level of guy where you're like, he's one of my locks. Tanner Bybee's one of these guys that is a set and forget. I think he's playing himself into that type of role. And I don't think he's as costly as maybe he should be, which I appreciate. I got him in the 9th round of the 12-teamer.
Yeah. So Tanner Bybee is someone I've always been just throw up my hands and be like, all right, whatever. I guess this is what you are. Because it's always been a weird four-seamer to me that still gets hit pretty hard against righties. It's 40% ICR against righties, 44%. And this is since the 13th of May that you're talking about here. As in that time, it's a 28% K rate, 6% walk rate. With about 3 ERA and 1 WHIP, which is just insane.
Beautiful.
So so I should say this again, 27% K rate, but insane for Tanner Bybee. And he also had the thing about the barking shoulder too, which I guess is okay. He's his four-seamer, slider, and changeup. I think he's still worse against lefties because the changeup isn't quite as good as the slider is. Slider has a 20% swing strike rate against righties. That's great. Watching him has always given me the ick, which is just it's one of those cases where he doesn't quite spot, and it bothers me. However, in those 23 games after his initial turmoil, which might be actually like the shoulder initially hurting and then getting better.
That's a good point. Just the inconsistency with the shoulder, perhaps.
Right. 29% ICR on the slider to righties, which is just showcasing like how good that was. And if you can take out righties, then you will have success in the majors. That's just kind of the rule.
It's a guarantee, yeah.
So that's really it for Bybee. Is it that good of a slider? And is it enough in the supporting cast? Is also his arm angle deceptive enough? And I think that's actually something that I've been missing a bit because the angle on his four-seamer isn't good. The pitch shape of it isn't good. It's all very mediocre. And he survived with that four-seamer. So is Bybee getting away with that more because of how it looks out of the hand with the slider and the changeup too? I'm learning a little bit more about, say, like Pivetta, and explains why his four-seamer is bad because the sweeper was his main pitch against righties, and those arms look very different out of the hand.
It's clear when it's coming.
Yeah, and that's what made it much harder to see. Much easier to pick up and do damage against. And maybe Bybee is better at this. I'm slowly getting my library of this intact to apply for next year. I want to believe in Bybee. I can't rid myself of the feeling that he's overperforming with a 26% K rate right now, 350 for the full year. But yeah, I get it. I mean, this is a situation that I generally like, which is you're allowed to go every 6 days, and there is another ceiling to hit.
I will say the team context absolutely plays a role here too. Yeah. I have a general trust for Cleveland. As we get deeper into the list, I'm going to bring up another guy, a young lefty of theirs that I quite like. But yeah, I'm intrigued by Bybee, and I do agree that there are some things that he needs to tighten up to pull off this again. But I think he can, and I think there are elements to his game that give him a solid floor to where he can be a consistent everyday starter. Tanner Bybee, every day meaning every time he goes, you keep him in. I want to ask you about another guy real quick.
Sure.
Because when I look on the surface, I understand some of the reasons for concern with Reese Olson, but as a big Tigers fan, obviously I'm deep in it. I've got a lot of confidence in Chris Fetter and what they're doing over there, the pitching coach, that I have some confidence that one of those one of the changeup or the curve can actually be a better offering for him. So he isn't just sinker slider. Because right now, I imagine anybody that's not a big fan of his would be the pushback is he's a 2 pitch guy, and
Sure.
I don't think that that's necessarily unfair. And in fact, that curveball does need some work because he threw two ugly ones that both got hit. You know,
Yeah.
the Bobby
Yeah.
Witt
Those are
grand
bad.
slam in his return from the
Yeah.
IL, and then the Lane Thomas one. But how do you feel about Reese? Because I think he's getting a little hidden because he had such a big injury in the summer. He kind of out of sight, out of mind. But he was awesome when he pitched, and I really was impressed with a lot of what he did. And you look at the 13% swinging strike rate versus a 22% K rate, and you wonder if maybe there's a little bit more that can push the K rate up. How do you feel about Reese Olson and what he did in his second season?
So I'm trying to figure out how I really feel about him. Still, it's a lovely time right now. And what I've actually done is I called Toby's now that removed from the Holly and the Cherry Bomb, where I feel like they are going to make larger impacts. Either I'm not going to drop them or they have that true ace ceiling. And then after that, actually, my rankings, I have this reserve for like two guys, which is Strider and Glass. Now I'm like, all right, these are IL studs. Like when they return and pitch, you're just going to obviously want them. And they are also expected back later than the other IL studs. Earlier than the other IL studs. It's like Lucas Giolito, Yuri Perez, Shane Bieber, Bradish, and Javier. I mean, I understand that Giolito probably is a relatively same timeline, but Strider's just a little bit higher up in
Mm-hmm.
Glasnow. We don't know what the case is there. Um, and that might change when we get more information, of course, on all of this. But then what I have is the upside flyer tier. And that tier is actually like 14 big, where those are quick decisions for me. And if it goes right, like it is like the Luis Heel, the Ryan Pepio, the Jared Jones of last year, then those become like, I have them and I'm really happy with it. Or if it's just bad, I move on. And then I have my Toby tier where it's okay. I think this is going to help me, but it's not going to just, I don't really think any of these guys in a 12 team are just going to be definitively, I'm just so thrilled I drafted this guy. I'm like, this is going to be that big needle pusher that's really turns into an SP2 or an SP3. And because of that, I have Reese Olson and Clark Schmidt right at the top of that tier. And I don't believe that Reese Olson has enough with his fastballs to become that kind of guy. I will mention the changeup is really his third pitch, and it's for lefties. He throws it about 25% of the time or so
Mm-hmm.
against lefties. And I've seen him throw some against righties as well, and those have been effective. I really see him as a slider changeup guy. Sinkers can be very effective against right-handers. He does get them inside a lot. The ICR against them last year was 31%. Very good. You want to see a sinker underneath like 38% for it to be like, okay, we're cool with this.
We can use this,
31
yeah.
against a right-hander. Oh, that means he's getting it inside. Really deceptive. Great. Problem is that doesn't always go there. And when it's over the plate, it can get hit a bit. And then he tries to go to the four seam. The four seam I don't like at all. And it's inconsistent right now from Reese Olson. I think he has to really figure out himself of 3 pitches per each side because you don't have 2 overwhelming pitches for each side of the plate. You don't have an overwhelming four seamer. The sinker isn't enough. And I think about another guy that really was sinker slider for the most part and tried to add more stuff and has always been like the guy who's going to break out, which is Brady Singer. And I'm like, okay, that's not enough. You really do need that bigger thing against lefties than what Reese Olson has. The changeup not quite there yet, and I don't think the sinker is as good as Brady Singer's when he's cooking with his. So that's why I have him here. I'm not saying that he can't get better and turn into a Holly, but I don't think he's going to be a top 20, top 25 potential, which I think you'd agree with. And
Right.
because of that, I'm just kind of stuck in this place of I could just be holding on to Reese Olson and not knowing what to do. And that's what I'm trying to avoid as much as I can in my drafts.
Okay. I don't think that's, I think there is work to be done here. And I definitely think that some of my resource and love is betting on Chris Fetter and
That's
company.
the thing that could happen.
And
Absolutely.
it is an unknown, so it's like not put all the eggs in the Reese Olson basket and get him everywhere on spec that Fetter's going to improve one of his pitches or something. But I do like what they've been doing with their pitching development.
That's a really good way of putting this. I love that, the unknown, like betting on the unknown. At what point are we betting on the unknown? Are we betting on there being more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have the Holly tier and the Cherry Bomb tier being like, I don't need to bet on the more, right? I don't need to bet on something extra. I'm happy with this and we're good. I think why I have this Toby tier like this is either like, all right, I don't need more, but this is fine, or they're not good, but they need to hit more, right, for this to be worth an L drop. And that's kind of how I distinguish this. So like with Reese Olson, sure, it's okay, but really like I need there to be more. And I don't know if I'm ready to bet on it being more. The upside flyer tier, like Arrighetti, is like, is this real high? Because it could just not. Jesus Luzardo, I'm not ready to just like, you drive me nuts.
Completely bananas with him. I totally agree on someone like Luzardo.
Like,
and that brings up another point.
Yeah.
Draft to your strengths as a manager.
Sure.
If these if the cherry bombs kill you, maybe you're better managing with more Tobys and Hollies, right? I think there is some of knowing how you as a manager work to best maximize playing in the landscape that you're in. It sounds maybe a little obvious, but like I think sometimes people just take players, oh, he's next on the list, and Nick and Paul like him, and it's like, yeah, I think you want to be more in tune with how you feel. And if you don't really believe in somebody, don't take them.
Right. So like, for example, I have Kumar Rocker at 68 ahead of Reese Olson. Not because I'm saying that Reese Olson's going to have a worse season, because Kumar Rocker to me could all of a sudden just light up spring and then be cooking out of the game, be in that rotation.
He could have 32% K rate. Yeah.
Right. And just everyone goes, oh man, Kumar Rocker is amazing. I'd rather take the chance on that than settling for Reese Olson. Right. And I hate saying settling for Reese Olson.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
I don't think that I'm losing out enough on Reese Olson not to take the chance on Kumar Rocker. That's what I mean. And that's what I mean about attacking the glob though, too, and figuring out the guys that you feel this way about. Right.
As opposed to just letting it come to you and maybe getting stuck with some guys that you're not as confident in. To your case, that would be like if you skipped Rocker and had to settle for Olsen, you'd be like, I had 3 chances to take Rocker. Why didn't I just take the guy I want? So again, having some commitment, it can go either way. Letting the draft come to you or have commitment. I choose to have the commitment to players. I want to go out and get the guys that I've done the extra work on and feel like they can do the moves that I want. So I want to be open to people's playing styles though, and say like, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But and I also took Bobby Miller everywhere. So what do I know about anything?
Well, but it's like, no. So Bobby Miller is the perfect example of this to me, of just, we don't know. I get it.
We do not know.
I want to believe yes, but I can't. And also, he's the first one of this whole giant list, because if it does, I'll know.
And then can I give you one on the we don't know side of like, this guy's safe, he's got a floor. And I use these terms too, so I'm not hating on anybody. Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah, right.
Well, anyone drafting him thinking that they're getting a safe 130 innings, 140 innings, it may be even more. Actually, he's been 157, 178, 190. So people are probably thinking, I'm getting a safe 150. There is no such thing as safe with pitching.
Yeah.
Nothing. There's no such thing. And so like he's on the lower end because your expectations weren't that high, but you thought that your floor was here. He's got a really solid floor. Does anybody in pitching? Because if things are going wrong, major leaguers can hit anybody. And I think Bobby Miller highlights that. And then somebody like Jordan Montgomery shows that even your stable, quote unquote, boring guys don't have the stability that we think they do.
Do you remember Alek Manoah?
Of course I remember Alek Manoah, and think about everything he's been through.
Ago.
Right. And it seems like ages ago. Obviously, he even pitched this year, but like, remember how quote unquote bankable he was. He followed up his rookie campaign with an even better 2022 and evaporated. And, that is the nature of pitching. That's obviously an extreme outlier, but he's not like one of one to have that happen to. We could probably go through and come up with a big number of guys that have done that. And Bobby Miller might be on the next track to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, so
I hope not.
I hope not too. We're going to talk about more of this and also a recap of the season in a way after this break. So Spore, we've been playing this game this entire year. We had these lovely picks we make every single day, and I'm just going to cut to the chase, y'all. We tied.
Didn't it have to be that way? In a weird way, like it had to be.
Let's go!
Sean Burke coming through. Yeah, we went back and forth all year. A couple points here, a couple points there, and push come to shove,
Oh
we hit him with
man.
a tie. I love
Jeez.
it.
I mean, it was also really frustrating. I was watching the like seeing Tyler Anderson not come through. Mitch Keller got 12 points instead of 10 or fewer, so
Brutal.
I didn't get the sit of the
Brutal.
week. Garrett Cole versus Corbin Burns went my way, so that opened up the door, and Brant Herter, of course, came through for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just funny. And that means I don't have to get a trophy. Unbelievable.
Nope.
Oh my gosh, we'll just
We
put
can
it down.
push
I
it to
mean, maybe
next
we'll do
year.
something silly, but I kind of don't even want to for the World Series and stuff like that. It's not, nah,
Nah,
it's
nah.
not the same.
We lock it even, and we'll open it back up next year.
So I do want to mention, and I think actually you wanted to talk about this beforehand. I think actually does kind of fit into this about taking risks and everything along those lines. I What is your stance really on the injured studs who are expected to be healthy opening day? And the ones that I'm going to bring up, I think, are the major ones are
Mm-hmm.
Jacob DeGrom, Shane McClanahan, Shohei Ohtani, and Sandy Alcantara. Where are you on those guys?
Generally avoiding them.
Okay.
I just don't like inviting that injury risk that's already present right there. And again, I
Mhm.
just got done saying that nobody's safe, everyone has injury risk, and I believe that. So then, but I think this strengthens that point. Why would I add injured guys to the team already, or guys coming back from injury who are uncertain, when I know that the guys that I believe are healthy right now are also already going to experience issues? And it's not a blanket policy that Paul never drafts anybody injured or anything like that. It's not that. But the guys that you named aren't going to be terribly cheap. And as such, I'm just not really there on the premium that they're likely to cost. So I doubt that the high end pitching returners, injury returners, are going to be on any of my teams. I'm more in the speculative. I'll pick a guy up in season. I'll take a shot on Robbie Ray coming back in the summer, things like that. But at the draft table, you're almost never going to find me drafting guys returning from substantial pitching injuries.
So I want to kind of think about this. I wish I had a good list of it. Of Arms last year coming back from Tommy John
Mm-hmm.
and what that meant. Obviously, I can't really put in like Cole Reagans or Tarek Skubal in this. They both returned and then had more extended of a year. But I guess the thought process I'm having, I mean, yes, Walker Bueller is one that we expected to be good, and that didn't work out. John Means had to get it redone.
That
Um,
was a bummer.
but my general theory, and I know it sounds crazy, but I've yet to hear a really great argument. I mean, we talked about it before, and I think you made a really good point about it. I'll mention as well. But guys who are coming back from Tommy John in a spectrum of players that are at any point just going to blow an elbow, those are the healthier elbows because they are fresh with their new wonderful brace and tendon.
So the honeymoon,
And
right?
you made the point that, look, I need to see them pitch so that it's okay.
Yes, that's where I'm
And
at.
that's a great point. And I think as we get closer to the season, like once spring happens and we see that the velocity is there and everything is fine and there's no delay, like there was a delay with Walker Bueller. Like, okay, fine. But Jacob DeGrom just pitched. Shane McClanahan is all set and ready to go.
Luis Heel popped off, right? But look where
Uh,
he was going. So that helped too. And that's what I
Right,
mean about
Louis Steele's
taking
actually a
the
good example too of like, okay. But I'm just thinking of like the guys that came back from Tommy John and like how they I think there are more from this past year, but I'm sure I'm forgetting them. But like when they're healthy coming back, yeah, Robbie Ray did. Jeffrey Springs did. Jeffrey Springs had a different injury or was it the same one?
Shane Boz. It was Springs had TJ.
I know, but what did he get removed from in season from? It
Oh, right. I
wasn't
thought he had
TJ.
like a hammy or something.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
I'll
Shane
look it
Baz
up.
was one,
Hmm.
who I think the Rays were just weird. He wasn't as good.
Well, and I
Uh,
wonder, you have to wonder how they would have played things if they'd been better. If they'd been
yeah, that's a great
competing,
point too.
would they have pushed harder with Boz, Rasmussen, and Springs? I don't know.
Yeah.
Actually, it looks like just elbow fatigue cropped back up on Springs.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that's what I got here.
Right. So I guess my whole philosophy of this is considering that we have injury risks for everyone.
Hmm.
I mean, is it really greater for Shane McClanahan than it is Chris Sale next year?
Is the
Um,
injury risk greater?
yeah. right. And I think this is the difficult part
That's a
that we
good
have.
comparison too because of
Yeah, because
Sale's injury.
we're so
Because
afraid of it this year, and then it cropped up, I guess, at the end. But it's
and the only thing
what
we
is
really
safe,
know
you know?
about injuries is previous injury is a good indicator of future injury, but not a
Right.
guarantee, right? And then you
Yep.
mentioned the point about the honeymoon period with TJ, and I do get that. But because of the potential, again, it comes down to the point you just made. I have to see them pitch.
Yeah.
It's not that I
Yeah.
won't take them. It's that I'm not taking them in a draft like the one that we're doing right now in October because
Mhm.
they have all the off season for something to have happened. And then
Sure.
come March, maybe even some of the high end ones could get on my radar. Because I agree with you. Don't put exponential more risk on Shane McClanahan than somebody who was healthy last year but has had injuries before or even hasn't because again they're pitching. So I do get that. That's a fair pushback. But if I don't see them thrown in spring, I get a lot of confidence at least just seeing them hit their benchmarks in spring, their velo
Yep.
benchmarks.
I
That they're supposed to
cannot
pitch
agree
3
more.
innings.
Yeah.
So it won't take much to sway me.
Yeah.
But in the fall drafts, fall and winter drafts, I'm not taking those guys.
Sure. So then the question becomes like, what is your expectation, right? Because you can't. Let's say we can't play that game of just I'll change this in February, so or
Right.
whatever.
We
Like
have
you're
to have
saying
an
right now.
expectation
Yeah. What
going
is it for
in.
you now?
Well, then let's stay on McClanahan for a moment
Sure.
because then team context plays a role. And
Mhm.
are they going to play soft with him? Of course they are. That is their that is their mantra over there in Tampa Bay. They're not going to push him. Maybe if they are competing again, same scenario as this year, what we said with the other injured guys. If they find themselves competing, do they push him a bit? Maybe. So the team context would play a role. I think Strider, I'd be more interested in,
Oh,
even
interesting. That's curious. I mean, he's not
because
supposed to come back for. I mean, he got his Tommy John in May or so, didn't
I
he?
think I did in April. So I
I
think
mean,
be
he
back in
went
like
down
May.
in April. I guess he went maybe
It's a
did
fair
it.
point.
But yeah.
Let me see
But
if I
like
got a date on it.
generally, my understanding is like 14 months is how I always
Right.
meant
That's
to
generally
do
what
it.
I live
So
with
that
too.
would be like mid June, or let's
Where's
just say,
Strider? Oh,
right? Or
2024.
maybe it's a
Yes.
brace. Maybe it's a newer, quicker
Well,
version
that's the thing
as well.
too.
Is
And
what the timeline will actually look like.
do you- this might be something that one of your writers will be interested in.
Mhm.
Writing out the new strategy, like the new Tommy
Yeah,
Johns and like what they
yeah,
mean and like because I think
right.
that is a huge deal. Like the internal brace and all that.
Mhm.
Yeah, no timeline set on Strider right now. So maybe he did get the internal brace in mid-April, and that is supposed to be an easier
Faster.
return,
Yeah.
but they're saying, and Anthopoulos indicated Friday, this was on October 4th, that it's possible for Strider to be back by opening day of next year, but his return to the rotation could be pushed back as far as early June. So they're thinking of bringing him back in the role that he started in when we first learned of Spencer Strider, into the fireman multi-inning role.
And then
I
stretching
wouldn't
him
necessarily
out.
be averse to that, by the way. I'm actually okay with that.
But
Because he's pitching.
I guess what I'm getting at is there are all these question marks on so many guys. And when it comes to the top premier talent, if they are healthy, if they've got a good procedure, I think in general these are going to be good procedures and they're going to be taken care of. And McClanahan's ceiling is absurd.
Still sky high. Yep.
I have Sandy Alcantara different than the others. But we know that Otani, but they were even like joking that he might be able to pitch this
In this
whole
playoff, yeah.
series, So I expect Otani to be absurd again.
Okay.
And then I expect Jacob deGrom to be the best pitcher on the planet because that's what he just looked like when he came back again, throwing 98.
Aren't you scared of him just breaking again, though? I know we
Well, I
just
get
got
that.
done saying
I'm with
don't
you.
get
No,
too scared
I'm
of
with
guys
you
with
on this.
risk.
The thing is, if I had no fear, he's SP1,
That's true. So then
right?
with the fear, he's still what, SP12 or something is what you're
I
saying?
have him at 7
Okay,
because
so even
the tier
higher.
after is actually a lot of the same. It's like Garrett Cole, Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, Max Fried, Aaron Nola. And to me, like, I think there's something else that gets really lost in a lot of conversations with people talking about like the season ahead is we all acknowledge this, that by April 25th, all of it's out the window when it
Correct.
comes to injury and health and all this kind of stuff. We just forget it.
Because you're
And
now
it's
in the
because
thick of the season.
you're out in the thing, right? And it's just like, well, this guy is dope and he's dope. And like, who knows who's going to injure the next, right? And I feel like we're going to feel that way with DeGrom.
Okay.
I just feel like you get DeGrom and he's just going to be looking so good. And you're like, oh, yeah. And then
It's
some
Jacob
other
deGrom.
guy in that everyone drafted beforehand is going to get hurt, and it's just, oh man, and there's deGrom just chilling. I mean, look at, I'm not going to compare them, but I'm going to just like give a side example. Not saying that he is this person, but that's how we felt about Chris Sale this year.
It is
We all
absolutely
avoided it, and that was that. Not to say that he's,
He
deGrom.
had
I
the
understand.
age factor. Well, deGrom has the
I
age
felt
factor
like this
though.
was Tyler Glass now. I mean, even though he
Yes.
got hurt and everything, he still was absurdly good for you.
And you know what? You talk about this too. There was some concern with Tarek Skubal for folks. He had 81 innings, right? People weren't ready to put a half season, because I remember ranking Skubal, Yamamoto, and Glasnow together in my top. I think it was 9 through 11, and I was like, I don't think I've ever had a 9 through 11 that has this light of a track record. There's a guy coming over from overseas, a guy with an 81 inning season, and I know Skubal has more than that, but we were betting on the 81 innings.
Yeah.
And Glasnow's career peak was 120. And yet I confidently put them 9 through 11.
Yeah.
And so, you know what? Maybe you're swaying me a little bit more to be like, maybe I don't need to wait all the way until spring to see McClanahan. Take the shot, because I saw how highly you ranked him. He's not going to go that high.
Well, I know
McClanahan fan. I love it. That's what I'm saying. That's the beauty. Yeah. You've got him up there, and
so fun.
I don't have to pay a SP8. So, yeah, I think you're swaying me. I think you're moving me a bit here to be a little bit more confident in the guys that I already like, because I have a list, from the injuries. There's a handful that I'm like, I want to see them in spring, but maybe I should take the winter discounts too, because they're only going to go up in spring too. That's another thing, because there's other people that, like, once they see them, to the moon goes the price, especially deGrom. I guarantee you, if deGrom has a good spring, he'll have a number one overall in the main.
I put out a poll being like, who should be SB1? It was like Tarek Skubal and Skeens and Wheeler, and then deGrom. And I actually I want to pat myself on the back just because I predicted the first 3 to go in this PL mock. I'm
patting you.
Thank you. No, it's just like, all right, who I guess would be the first 3? Probably these guys. I don't know. And that's actually what it is, which is great. But
you nailed it.
But I put deGrom there. I was like, deGrom has obviously an opportunity. I remember in 2022, really fun discussions with Jordan Rosenbaum being like, yo, maybe it's 2023 actually, entering drafts, saying deGrom is that much better than everyone else. And like, if you get this many innings, you're good with it, obviously. And I was pushing back saying like, it's so binary, but still, like, I understand that argument of SP1, and no one it was like 3% said deGrom SP1,
really only 3%.
And it wasn't necessarily that like I was going to do it, but I was just like, yeah, but here are all the reasons why someone should consider this. Let's play devil's advocate with it. I don't know. deGrom is
I think it's a good devil's advocate to, like,
so good.
He is. And the Sale, I think seeing Sale, and it's not to say that he's going to be Sale, it's to say that this does happen. The guy that was an ace before can return and be great. And there's also the fact that we saw Ace deGrom. It was very limited, but his stuff was still there. If it was diminished stuff and you were trying to get me to believe like, oh, no, you didn't see the real deGrom, he's going to be back next year, and it'll be, no. It was there. Only for the, 12 innings that he threw, but it was still Ace deGrom. So I think that's, I think in this whole combo here, you've moved me to be stronger on those guys that if I'm going to like them in spring, don't wait, because then I am blowing the discount.
Yeah, I'm just going to be like, are they dope when they pitch? Great. I want them on my team.
Give me. Right. Are you dope?
I mean, just you look at him and go, oh my God, this guy's amazing. I'm like, yeah, he is. And it's like, I don't know how many innings he's going to go. Neither do I. I don't know how many of the other guys are going to go. Sure, there's like a probably higher likelihood slightly of some other ones, but who knows? Who knows, y'all? And that's a good way to end this, because we don't know what we're doing for next year, and we're figuring it out with all of you. Yes, and we'll be back somewhat regular cadence. I think every other week is generally what we're going to be, maybe a little bit here or there. We'll see. We will certainly, when this draft ends, we're in the 13th, actually 14th round now. And when that ends, I will be sitting here and talking to Sporer about all of his picks. And I'm so curious to hear a lot of this. And yes, that will include hitters. Believe it or not, guys. This is the pitcherless
I'll
way.
help Nick talk hitters. Don't
worry.
Going
through. No, here's the thing. I've
listened to you do these before.
What's that? I need to draft hitters too. I need to know.
I know. And you've drafted some really good ones.
I don't throw a dart.
I stole Lewis from me,
y'all. Process plus.
You only stole my boy Royce Lewis.
Well, he's just, oh man, I remember watching him in April, and I'm just like, this guy's a stud. I just need one game to watch him.
I totally agree.
Like, you're amazing. It's just you're not healthy. And I was going to
opening day was the perfect microcosm of Royce Lewis. Hit a bomb, a double, and got hurt. Maybe it was just one hit, but it was like
off of Cole Reagan's, and it was such a good home run. I'm like, I hate you.
and then you got like you ran the gamut of the Royce Lewis experience in opening day. It was kind of crazy.
And then I was going to double up with Mark Vientos because Mark Vientos, I'm a huge believer and
huge believer.
Like things.
I love Vientos.
Oh,
all right, Nick. Well, it was great speaking with you by the fire, bud.
Great time by the fire. And is there anything that you're gonna be working on across?
We'll have another. Justin and I are going to get the pod going back up again this week as well, and we'll probably do like a one episode a week type vibe instead of 3 as we kind of get through the rest of October. I am working on a ranking. I want to kind of have it. I think we're going to have our first position rankings in early November. All the positions, the whole fantasy team over there at Fangraphs, the first run. And we're going to do it what we did last year, where we update the same post throughout the winter. So as news happens at each position, that can be your one-stop shop for the SPs, is that one post that I have, and that'll be updated all throughout. So yeah, that's coming quick. I mean, it's already October 15th, and we'll be seeing each other in 2 weeks in Arizona. And then about a week or 2 after that, rankings will be up, and we'll be in the thick of the off season. It comes quickly.
Oh yes. Oh my gosh, does it? What we're doing is we are working on creating this pro dashboard for everybody. And for those who have PL Pro, essentially it's going to be your analytics hub for your fantasy teams that you import. And we have so much stuff that we want to we talk about, and instead of you trying to find all these things separately, it just gets fed to you. And there's no manager out there like this, and we're so excited for it. So the beta is expected by December, and for those who have PL Plus and PL Pro, you'll have access to it, and then we hope to launch it early next year in the preseason. So can't wait for that. I am super busy with that, and of course scanning out my top 200. But really, Spore, the thing I'm going to be doing soon, get this, I'm going to be streaming every single team and talking about their rotation,
going through their entire rotation. Monday,
let's go. October 21st. So come join, and we'll talk about all these players and all these pitchers every single
What order
team.
are you going in? Any particular order?
Oh, man, I can't remember what it is. The first team. I have some random team. I always do it, guys who weren't in the playoffs.
Okay, well, then on October 24th, you should do Detroit, because that's my birthday.
Oh, is it? I can change that for you. I can make that happen. Also, I made sure to keep teams that would be free agent signings later on.
Good point.
And the Tigers would probably be in there.
That's fair if you don't do it. I would just want to. I really just want to bring up my birthday.
Do that.
Let's be honest.
It's okay. I got you.
Thank
October 24th, Spore's birthday. One day before someone very close to me's birthday too. So that's pretty cool.
Love it.
But that is it. So on the behalf of Paul Sporer, my name is Nick Pollack, and thank you for joining us by the fire.